Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Charles Sebastian. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Show. We cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got an excellent show for you guys. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and sub to the channel. So, as you guys know, some shows at ESPN have finally come to finale. PTI, pardon the interruption, just concluded on air with Michael Wilbon, and then of course Around the Horn just concluded with Toni Reali. Now, if you know anything about Around the Horn, it's been around, no pun intended, it's been around for pretty much forever, man. Like, that show has been a staple in sports media television, right? Great show. They used to have a great panel of guests. Everyone had a varying opinion, and it was just really interesting the way that they used to do it, where you had kind of like a timer to give your opinion, and then Toni Reali would then give you a score depending on what you said and all of that. So it was a really great show. Now, what I wasn't aware of was that Max Kellerman was the one that essentially initially kicked off that show. I didn't know that, right? Now, why is Max Kellerman coming up? It seems like Max Kellerman made some news this morning. So essentially what happened was the cast or the panel that used to comprise the Around the Horn show, although they had kind of like a rotating cast, they were kind of doing like a summary of what the show was, and I guess, you know, what it was like doing the show. And I think they were taking Q&A from viewers or whatever. I don't know if it was live or whatever. And I guess one person asked a question about Max Kellerman, where they were essentially saying it would have been nice to see Max Kellerman at the finale, given the fact that he was the one that helped, you know, kick off the show. And Toni Reali essentially broke his silence on why Max Kellerman was absent during the final taping or the finale of the Around the Horn show. So for those of you who didn't hear his comments, want to play it for you now, and then want to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to what he had to say there.
I got a comment in here about, I wish there was a Max Kellerman reference in the comments. I want to talk about this just for a second. You know, we just saw him in the video for Happy Trails, so it just reminded me. You know, I was approaching this finale in a way to talk about how the show got here today. We've done anniversaries where we even invited Max back in our 20th anniversary. You know, and that was great. And anniversaries where we honored Bill Wolf, the first producers. You know, and in this place, I think Max has conveyed enough for me to say he wanted this show to go forward in the way it did. That's not a quote, but that's just getting a general vibe of it. And of course, he was on our big board that we had at the end of the show. And, you know, first 200 episodes, Max Kellerman show. It's the next 4,800 was, I hope to say, your show, guys.
Fantastic. So you heard what he had to say there. So then I started to do a little bit more research, and I came across an article here from Awful Announcing saying Max Kellerman's return seems more distant than ever. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. It looks like they have an update on him. But before we even get into what this reporter had to say, today's video is brought to you by our sponsor, Game Time. One of the things I love the most is making unforgettable memories with family and friends. And one of the things I hate the most is overpaying for tickets only to find out that there was a better deal out there. That's one of the reasons I started using Game Time. Game Time is the easy go-to app for last-minute tickets to sports, concert, and theater events across 60+ states in the US and Canada. Game Time saves me time, money, and stress by curating only the best deals, so I'm not wasting a whole bunch of time scrolling through overpriced tickets. Game Time Picks is my favorite tool. It highlights the best value seats instantly. No more guesswork, no more wasting time. For example, I am super excited about this Game 2 matchup between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Denver Nuggets. Here's what I like to do. I turn on all-in pricing so I know exactly what I'm paying for upfront. I check Game Time Picks to find out the most valuable deals. And finally, I pick the ticket I want. I choose between the cheapest deal, the great deal, or the amazing deal. Once you select the ticket you want, you can use their panoramic seat view to ensure you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and use redeem code CLNS for $20 off. And remember, whenever you support this sponsor, you're supporting this channel. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into what this article says. This Toni Reali once helped Max Kellerman move to Washington, D.C., but as Reali signed off on the for the final time, closing the book on Around the Horn after a 23-year run, Kellerman wasn't there to return the favor. Well, we all waited, hoping maybe and even expecting Kellerman to reemerge, like Steve Carell's Michael Scott showing up in the Office's finale, but it never happened. Maybe it's because Kellerman didn't leave quietly. Perhaps it's because in the eyes of the network, he had already been deemed expendable. Either way, as the credits roll Friday, there was no sign of Kellerman. Maybe there should have been. How do you erase the memory of someone who helped start the show? Reali was the franchise MVP, no question, but Kellerman, he wore the uniform first. He was the original, the first to take the field, the guy who got the job before his 30th birthday. As for how he landed it, the ESPN exec Mark Shapiro told Front Office Sports that Kellerman was deemed an up-and-comer. He's got a lot of personality, Shapiro told Ryan Glass-Steagall. He's extremely bright and articulate. We just thought he'd be somebody good for that show, and once we got into auditions, it was abundantly clear that he was the right kind of central command to move forward. He wasn't afraid to bring it, Shapiro continued. He wasn't afraid to put forward a controversial take. He didn't shy away from opinion. He knew how to speak in sound bites. We knew he'd be terrific at directing traffic, and he was driving one hell of a niche and personality for himself in boxing, and we thought he could go broader. As he drove the thing, and then in late 2003, he and producer Bill Wolf left Around the Horn to launch One Max on Fox Sports Net. The rest of the show is history, belonged to Toni Reali. And then the article then continues on saying, it says, after his First Take exit, Dan Le Batard once accused ESPN of trying to kill Kellerman's career. They buried him in an impossible schedule and called it an opportunity. His on-air chemistry with Stephen A. Smith had flatlined, and instead of building something new, they cut bait. They stretched him thin, made him disposable, and then paid him to disappear. Kellerman has always valued his privacy, but he's also been a lifer in the business. So it stood out when names like Brian Kenny, Marcellus Wiley, Jordan Schultz hinted that he had something brewing, something cool, they said. A comeback was pegged for late 2024. It is now May 2025, still no Kellerman. You think, if nothing else, he'd resurface to say goodbye to the show he helped launch. Around the Horn was his expansion franchise. Reali turned it into a legacy project, but Kellerman planted the flag. He never left the contract. He left over a contract dispute and returned with a different voice years later. He was no longer Max Kellerman, the host, but Max Kellerman, the hot take machine. And the article just went on to say a few other things there at the tail end. It says, it started with Kellerman. It didn't end with him. That's okay. It was Reali's show, but Kellerman lit the match. But in the end, he didn't show up to see the fire go out. What are my thoughts about this? Look, say whatever you want about Max Kellerman, and I understand that some people didn't like him. I think that Max was able to get a lot of support behind him after things started to fall apart between him and Stephen A. Smith, especially after he was removed from ESPN First Take and then ultimately removed from the network, and the things that Stephen A. Smith was saying about him on various shows like the Joe Budden podcast, I think the Breakfast Club and other places. That's when people really started to rally behind him and really, lend their support to him because they didn't like the way that he was being railroaded by Stephen A. Smith. Yes, I also heard from people like Marcellus Wiley and others that Max Kellerman was expected to make his return, but so far we haven't seen him. Hopefully we do see him in the future, because the guy is one hell of a talent. Whether you like him or not, he's pretty good at what he does. So hopefully we see him in the future. But hey, these are just my thoughts on it. What I want to know from you guys, what do you think about this report? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. We catch you on the next show. Peace.